Yes, Josh, if you die in Canada, you die in real life, too.
Oh, Josh, that's great.
It's just that everyone gathers around your dead body and says sorry.
Yeah.
All right. God damn. Oh, I feel so thrashed. This is going to be rough. Scott.
Yep.
Nick.
Here.
Ian.
Hi.
By your powers combined, I am Captain Buster! Oh, God.
Why would you do that?
It wasn't,
He's our hero.
it wasn't
After you
worth
get
it.
done bitching about your throat, and then you go and do that.
And it's not even going to be captured on cast. Well, maybe now it will be.
Well, yeah, we got it on the cold open at least, or something.
So we can hear Sean coughing his life away.
It's literally the cold open because he has a cold.
The con open. The cough open.
The con cough. All right.
A cacophony of...
Sorry, enough, we're done.
Mythos Busters, investigating the mystery, monsters, and madness of Arkham Horror, the card game.
Hello and welcome to episode 46 of Mythos Busters, where I'm not even supposed to be here today! It's not worth it. I'm sorry. I'm Sean. I have a cold. And I'm going to lean hard on my friends today. Hi, Ian. You're with us. We're so excited to see all you guys, especially you, because you've never been to Minnesota before.
No, I haven't. So this is kind of... I think for any of the people who are into LCGs, like, going there is like going to Mecca, kind of. It's the LCG Mecca, so I'm looking forward to seeing it for myself, since I've heard so much about the FFG Center.
Although I'm fairly certain actual Mecca isn't adjacent to a car parts store.
That's
It might
probably
be.
a good...
Never
good
been
bet,
there.
I think.
I've never been, I can't confirm, but I have a strong suspicion. Joining us as well is someone who's been to Minnesota quite a few times, Nick. Hi, Nick.
Hi, yes, I am in Minnesota currently, surprisingly enough.
Whoa. You
So
got there
many
early.
times.
Yeah, I got here 30 years early for this Arkham Knights.
But he's always surprised somehow. Wakes up and like, I'm in Minnesota?
I know, right? Keep
Well,
trying to
especially
leave.
today. Nick, I don't know if it's got to be snowing farther north than I am, but it's snowing here.
It looks, from the picture you shared, it looks like yours is sticking more than ours, but ours just started like 20 minutes ago, and I'm in the basement now, so it might look whiter than when I descended.
But the nice thing is, with the cold, this is going to make all the leaves turn right quick, so Minnesota's going to be beautiful for Arkham Knights, assuming it's not raining or snowing. And joining as well, another veteran of Minnesota visits, Scott. Hi, Scott.
Hey, I'm excited to get to the warm and tropical metropolis of Minneapolis.
We definitely we don't go far into the as far into like the abyss of torpid coldness that you do.
I am beyond the wall. Let's just... Yeah.
You live in Hardhome, basically.
We got snow like a month ago.
And I've kind of come to the conclusion that if we're extending the Westeros metaphor here, the Twin Cities is basically Moat Cailin because it was built on a bog.
I lost this metaphor at the wall.
Yeah. I only watch the shows. And I constantly have to ask my wife, okay, what city is this again? Who's that? He's the guy from the Pyramid City, right?
I'm the same way. I'm always just like, have we seen this person before? And Laura's like, yes!
Yes, they're really important.
I guess I would be... I guess I'd be in the
series. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Ian.
I guess I'd be in the equivalent of the Reach, because everyone makes fun of them because they always have good weather and they can't stand the cold. That's kind of the running joke about the Tyrells throughout the whole thing. So
Yep. And you guys have the good wine and and all like the liberal prosperity. It's
Would like Arizona and Nevada then be the place where the sand kids are from, the assassins?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
yeah,
Good talk.
Oh, the sand vipers that I thought were actually like giant snakes, and turns out they're just dudes and boring.
Yeah.
No, the sand snakes.
Lame.
They're all
They're women.
they're all
dudes.
chicks.
Oh, okay, well, they're still not giant vipers. That would be awesome.
Accurate.
that would have been an improvement on the show
we
version.
have found our common ground.
They could have been female vipers. I don't care.
I'm fairly certain female snakes are bigger than male snakes, so yes.
Even better!
Okay, so Wow, that was definitely
quite
the most
the intro.
that was the loosey-gooseyest intro we've ever had. So we've got a great episode for you guys today. Hopefully, for those of you who are coming to Arkham Nights, we're providing a little bit of en route entertainment. So we've got our normal intros. We're going to catch up with the hosts since we haven't seen everyone. Again, this is the first time we've been all four of us in the same recording in a good long while.
Yeah. Oh, well, since Moanfest.
Oh, yeah, I suppose we were all there for Bitchfest.
I was told specifically not to call it Bitchfest now.
We can call it Bitchfest on the podcast. I just didn't want it to be in writing.
Oh, I see.
So we've got some Patreon business to clear up. We're going to cover our community spotlight for the day. We've got some very, very exciting news. And then we're going to talk a little bit about some rules. We've got everything in this episode. And our discussion topic today is going to be weaknesses. How you take them, how you account for them, how you play around them. So let's hop right into it. Ian, what do we have vis-a-vis our patrons this week?
Okay, so as always, thanks to everyone who has pledged, and thank you to all our new patrons that we've gotten since last episode. We do want to give our shout outs to a few patrons. So shout out to our two members of the board of directors right now, Chris Basie and Ian Redmond Wallace. Thanks for your generosity and helping support us. Much appreciated. Our random patron that we've selected to call out this time is Derek Marcy. Thanks so much for supporting the show and listening. And we do have a new job title. As mentioned last time, we're kind of rolling them out a bit at a time each episode. So
HR is really tying our hands on making promises before everything is formalized and in writing.
Yeah,
I hate HR.
They gotta make sure that all the job responsibilities are listed out and double checked. But this time around, James Huff has received his job title, and he is going to be the director of spires construction and non-Euclidean architecture. So
and there's a story behind that.
There is. The story behind that is that our friend James Huff has been, if you check out his Instagram, which is at Black Jimmy on Instagram, he does lots of different things with Legos, but one of the things he's done is made Lego versions of the investigators, like little minifigs Legos to use instead of the little mini cards. So they're very cool. So check out his Instagram, see what he's got going. I definitely admire what he's done.
Yeah, and hopefully by the time this episode releases, I'll have gotten out of my old man stupor and figured out Instagram and have shared a few of them on the Mythos Busters page. So if you haven't yet, go follow us at the Mythos Busters at Instagram.
Yes.
And Sean, if you're going to get off your old man huff, it's Insta or the Gram.
Oh, that's right. That's
no one calls it the Gram.
Because those are the names that are on fleek, right?
Oh, gross.
Yeet.
Yeah, bae.
All right, that's enough.
I can't take any more.
I know.
And the other important part of our Patreon is there's still time left to support us on Patreon before our Patreon contest ends. As a reminder, at the end of the month, we're going to draw a random patron who's going to win a set of the Arkham Knights booty, the set of swag that's coming. And they just announced there's some other stuff that's added to it. They added a playmat and a poster that's coming with that as well. So it's a pretty nice set of stuff.
Cool.
Yeah.
I have to say. I'm not generally one for posters, but I was like, oh, I dig.
Yeah, I think I'm probably going to get a frame for that and put it in my little game room.
Fray the edges a little bit.
Yeah. And besides the one kind of grand prize winner, we'll also pick out a few names who will win sets of our alternate art cards that we made for Gen Con for Fine Clothes and Emergency Quiche. So even if you don't win the grand prize, you get those. So all you have to do, you literally have to do nothing except for support us at some level, $1 or above, and you have a chance to win.
For the cost of half a cup of coffee per month. You too could be the owner of a share of Mythos Busters Incorporated. All right, excellent. So probably by the time we record next, that will have closed, right? If I'm doing the math correctly. I'm gonna say yes, because
Sure.
chances are we're all gonna want a little bit of a respite after Arkham Knights. Much as I love it, it is intense.
Yeah, especially because listeners can expect some content coming out of Arkham Knights itself. So,
Oh
yeah,
yes,
I'm sure.
Oh yes.
I'm sure we'll take a little break after that.
All right. So moving on from here, we've got our community highlight for the week. Scott, I feel like you're probably the most familiar with this particular content producer, so why don't you give us the elevator pitch?
Oh, geez. So a man from Lang, he does Whisper in Darkness. He's got a YouTube channel. He does some card reviews. He does some playthroughs. He'll build decks. Like one of my favorites was his Succeed by 2 Jenny. And so he'll take those through a few scenarios and stuff. He lives 90 minutes from me, oddly enough. Like I was chatting with him one day because he has his stuff up on YouTube. And I was like, man, I really want to listen to some of your stuff, but I can't listen to YouTube on the way to work. You should put it in podcast format. We started chatting, and I was like, oh, hey, you're Canadian. And yeah, so very close to where I live. But check out his channel. Nick put it in the chat there. Yeah, really cool stuff.
And I definitely had a chance to check out a couple of his videos prior to this episode, and yeah, he definitely does do very good work. And as a content producer myself, I have the utmost respect for his relentless, just regularity of production. Dude is a workhorse.
Yeah.
So awesome. Check that out if you haven't already. Ian, what news hath dropped upon us?
Oh, not much.
Quiet you.
Nothing big. So
on to the main topic.
Yeah.
Literally the only reason I'm here today.
Let's go to our main topic. We did get a couple of articles. The first was about Arkham Knights, which was kind of just detailing how exactly the Knights Usurper will be building off of the Eternal Slumber. I'm not going to go too in depth with it because it does contain some spoilers in case people want to experience it for themselves. And the article's there, so go ahead and read the article. But just safe to say that it seems pretty cool that the second scenario is going to be taking into account some of what happened at Gen Con, which basically people didn't do too well at Gen Con, I think was the overall conclusion from the statistics.
Oh, I never would have guessed that.
There was another article. So for what was it? I think it was like a straight 2 weeks. They were dropping these kind of like tarot card related art on the FFG Twitter, and Matt was coming into our Discord and posting it like on the dot, midnight
At
Central
midnight,
Time.
yeah.
And so everyone was getting driven crazy, wondering what it was about, and then finally. On Friday, they released this article, which was a nice gift to us recording today. But so the next cycle is going to be The Circle Undone. Love the box art, as always. They always get the best box art. Looks like some kind of witch or cultist ceremony going on. This one is going to be focused around the Silver Twilight Lodge, which I just have to take an aside to say... That's like, if you put Carcosa was kind of my favorite of the classic ancient old ones, but if you asked me to say what cycle theme I would want, Silver Twilight Lodge is probably number one. So I was so stoked to see this. I even had notes for a custom campaign I was going to do around the Silver Twilight Lodge, because I figured they would never do a cycle about it, because it's not focused around an ancient one, really. Fortunately, I never started work on it, though.
Quick aside before we get into the actual good part of this article. Ian, it seems like you probably have the most familiarity with the Silver Twilight Lodge. What place and significance does that hold within the Arkham Files mythos?
It's kind of like loosely based around what you would think of as like the story version of secret societies, like
it's like the cult, right?
Right. And so it's a cult, but it's also focused around kind of the power players in Arkham. So if you're kind of one of the big movers and shakers, like you're probably either going to be a member of the lodge or you're holding out against the lodge, and they're going to probably have some kind of grudge against you for not being part of their society. And they are focused around doing culty things, of course. So
Hashtag culty things.
They're kind of the gateway to power in Arkham, both in terms of like magical power, but also like, you know, political power and economic power and everything, those kind of things.
And I'm also a big fan of that box art. Not only do we have Agnes coming at those cultists with some kind of sword or axe or something, but we have Matt Smith's Doctor Who with some kind of tome or book as well. Which I was a fan.
It does look like that. So I'm wondering if we're going to get Charlie Kane, because he is, you know, if we're talking about power players, he's like A1 power player. So I don't know. We'll see.
Charlie Kane. That would be amazing.
I know a lot of people would be happy about that.
What do you think? He'd be Rogue, wouldn't he? Definitely be Rogue.
I think.
Are we doing this?
It's Charlie Kane.
My first inclination is Rogue, yeah, but
he's really hard to place. Like, if I could see an argument for another neutral investigator, I could see it for Charlie.
No,
I just want to know how he would work. Like, he would have to be like our first support-focused Gator, right?
Well, yeah, support-focused Rogue. How much sense does that make?
That'd be amazing, though, because imagine if like you could stack up on all the cash. What if he could transfer actions to other players? What if you could spend resources to give your actions to other players? Then you have this build where you're all about accumulating extra actions and then just spreading them around. Oh, that'd be nuts!
So, like, Rogue off-class Seeker, and then you could splash in Attorney Urkel.
Oh,
and
yeah!
just go, like,
That would be so cool!
This Nickgasm brought to you by Charlie Kane.
Any other investigators people are hoping for? Not you, Sean, but anyone else.
Yeah, keep quiet.
I hope we get Diana Stanley soon.
I'm personally really hoping for Rita. That's like the number one that I want to see, and I could see her being in this cycle, possibly.
Is she the track athlete or something?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
I think.
Hey, how about Marie? I've been hoping for Marie for a while.
Well,
I mean, we're probably gonna have to keep dreaming. But
looks like that's not gonna happen.
I like McGlenn and Monterey Jack are the two that I'm kind of excited for. I would have placed
Monterey Drac. Now I'm just seeing a Krogan with a hat on.
I would take that too. Funny thing is, I would have put Monterey Jack in the last cycle had I, been guessing. So I'm kind of interested as where he's going to pop up.
Yeah, I think Ursula took his spot, and it's funny because he's name dropped in the campaign guide to Forgotten Age too.
That's just future proofing. I don't think that's meaningful of anything release wise.
Because I mean, we'll get everyone eventually, as long as something terrible doesn't happen to the game. So,
because the past couple cycles have kind of been Arkham on tour, this finally seems like this cycle is going to be. It's going to feel more like OG Arkham Horror, where it's all like in the streets of Arkham, right?
Right.
Well, probably in some other worlds too, but.
Yeah, I definitely want to see McGlenn too. I want my 5-fight Rogue at some point. So before we get to some new investigator who's spoiled, there is one card who we can kind of see, one player card. This is a Rogue card, the Moon, number 18. And this is related to some of the tarot card spoilers or teasers, I should say, that we were getting.
And before we hop into there, I just want to throw, related to the tarot teasers, I want to throw a huge up to Matt, who was just having so much fun in our Discord with this. Above and beyond the Call of Duty. Just made it fun for everyone.
Yeah, definitely. So the Moon is a 3-cost asset, 1 XP. Subtitle is Message from Your Inner Self. It is tarot traded. You get +1 agility. And reaction when the game begins, if the Moon is in your opening hand, put it into play. We can't see the rest of it, so we can't see if it takes up any slots, but we at least know what it does, which is pretty nice if it's in your opening hand.
Yeah.
Well, if it's in his hat, could that be an accessory?
That's what I was thinking, was accessory or maybe arcane. I don't think it'd be arcane, because that's
like a hat and a hat, right?
It's a feather in his cap.
Yeah.
Maybe
they're adding the hat slot.
Yeah, we need a head slot. Like, Like the 1920s are all about these different hats and stuff. We definitely, yeah. So I'd take it. I mean, free agility boost if it's in your opening hand.
Why would you not take it?
Yeah, one
It's
XP,
one
too.
experience, and it's a potential free play. Why would a rogue not take this?
Yep. Yeah.
I guess my argument to that would be, would it be worth it if you didn't get it in your opening hand? Because it also doesn't have any icons, so you can't commit it to
Three resources for one boost in agility for the rest of the game.
If we assume it doesn't take up a crucial slot.
Right,
Yeah.
yes.
Again,
That's
depending
still
on the
works.
slot.
So, I mean, we're dealing with partial information here, but, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I think it'd be worth... Like, imagine, like, playing a Seeker and getting +1 intellect, you know, if the yellow version is like that, or the Guardian one that does +1 combat if it's like that. So,
Yeah.
3 resources for +1 for the rest of the game. Unless you draw it late game, then it might just be fodder to an encounter card that forces you to discard, but...
Yeah. Good for corrosion. Yep.
It'll be interesting to see if anything plays off of tarot too, like you know, some kind of events or stuff that enables you to grab tarots, those kind of things. Okay, so there was
Is it time now?
There was a new investigator spoiled. I'm not sure who I should have read this one though. Maybe Nick.
I'll take it. Yeah.
Yeah, let's have Nick. Okay. Go ahead,
I have
Sean.
killed
Go
for
ahead.
so much less.
I think he's leaving the show after he reads this.
Yeah, that's it.
Well, I kind of can now, right?
Right.
Drops.
My work
Drops his
here
podcast
is
mic.
finished. This house is clean. Okay, guys, today we're spelling love Diana. Diana Stanley has finally dropped... Sorry, I got excited.
Gosh. He's gonna die before he makes it through.
Diana Stanley has finally dropped, and I'm so happy now. But I will say that the reveal was a bit of a roller coaster the first time I saw her. So Diana Stanley is, of course, despite all the naysayers, she is a mystic investigator.
Boo!
Quiet. I don't know why there was any question. To me, she is the mystic. Like outside of like maybe Dexter, Drake, and Luke,
Agreed.
who maybe are a little bit more mysticky, Diana is right there. So anyway, Diana is the redeemed cultist, of course. She has... Here's the dip on the roller coaster. 1 willpower.
Worse than rogues.
3 intellect, 3 combat, and 3 agility. She's the cultist and silver twilight traits. Diana Stanley gets +1 willpower for each card beneath her. Oh, I see a solution for the weakness. Built right in. That's nice. And her ability is reaction. After a card you own cancels or ignores a card effect or game effect. If there are fewer than 5 cards beneath Diana Stanley, place that card face down beneath her. Draw 1 card and gain 1 resource. Limit once per phase. Her Elder Sign effect is +2. You may choose a card beneath Diana Stanley and add it to your hand. And then she has a very solid spread of health and sanity at 7 apiece. Moving on from there, we have not seen the back of her card, so right now we get to just expound on what mystic options and neutral options she has. However, the article did reveal that she starts with her signature card in her hand.
Ooh.
So I'm steamrolling over all you guys. I'm just reading these cards.
Yeah, please do.
Dark Insight is a signature event, 2 cost, no pips. Insight traded, Diana Stanley deck only, fast. When an investigator at your location, play when an investigator at your location draws an encounter card or a weakness. Cancel all of that card's effects and shuffle it back into its deck. Do not draw a new card to replace it.
That's a strong cancel.
Yeah.
And it starts in your opening hand, guys. That's huge for solo mystic.
Yeah.
We'll-
Draws an encounter card, not like a treachery, like big bad enemy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty strong.
That's
back into the deck with you thing in the sarcophagus.
Especially for solo mystics when they need time to get set up. Like that's worth its weight in gold.
Mm-hmm.
And then she's on to 2 willpower and gets an extra resource and a card, and you're on your way. All right. she has a second signature card, guys. The Twilight Blade. Sanctum's Reward is a 3-cost, I guess, neutral asset. It has a willpower, combat, and wild icon. Item, relic, and weapon traded. Diana Stanley deck only. Action, fight. You may, which is interesting, you may use willpower instead of combat for this attack. And then the real ability of this card, that's cool. That's cool to have that option. But the real ability of this card is you may play or commit events and skills beneath Diana Stanley as if they were in your hand. As an additional cost to play or commit a card in this way, you must exhaust Twilight Blade. And you can't trigger Diana Stanley's reaction ability while playing or committing a card this way. And of course, the Twilight Blade takes up a hand slot. Rounding out the set is her weakness, Terrible Secret, which is a Madness, Treachery, Revelation. If there are no cards beneath Diana Stanley, shuffle Terrible Secret back into your deck. Otherwise, for each card beneath Diana Stanley, you must either discard that card, or take 1 horror. Cannot be cancelled. Because Diana Stanley's just going to have so many options to just go, nope, sorry.
Yeah. The good news is that it's horror and not direct horror, though.
Yeah, that's true.
Which is, if it was direct,
that's huge for Mystic.
That would be rough if you have to take like 5 direct on the chin. But if you have like your Alyssa out, you can soak like 3 of that, and it's an option.
Or Olive, because Olive indeed has the word ignore printed on her. You could pop an ally beneath DianaStanley. Just pointing that out.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
So okay. So the options that I'm aware of that I tallied up when I saw her, we've got in Mystic, because we don't know what else she can take. We've got Grotesque Statue. We've got Defiances. We've got your Wards of Protection, of course. We've got Dark Prophecy.
Sure.
Olive. And surely I'm missing one more.
Counterspell.
Counterspell, there it is, thank you. Definitely Counterspell.
Hypnotic Gaze.
Yep.
And all 3 wards. The thing, though, is like you'd have to take your Grotesque Statue on the 3rd charge use if you wanted to use it and put that under her, so you'd only get 3 charges out of it. Because as soon as you use the 4th, it's gone. So.
Yeah, but it's still a card you own. It's not a card you control, right?
But
if we're parsing into it. If it said you control, yes, it needs to be in play, right? But if it's you own, you still own it in your discard pile, right?
Interesting.
Ooh.
After a card you
own.
Oh, hey, Matt's in chat. Let's get a ruling. Hi, Matt.
And I think for the Defiance one, it has to actually... The token actually has to be revealed so you can ignore it, right? If I'm parsing that correctly.
Right, because it's after it actually ignores an effect or something. So you have to hit on Defiance for it to work. That's fine. Dark Prophecy exists, so no matter what, you're getting something off of that. Like Dark Prophecy into Defiance is basically Mystic Lucky.
Takes 2 cards, but yeah.
But with Diana Stanley, it replaces itself.
Lucky.
It's a cantrip.
Yeah. I think it's a super interesting design. I really like it a lot.
Agreed.
And I love that the weakness is like actively playing against that core strength. I know that's kind of the point of investigator weaknesses, but this one just makes me happy because it gives you the choice that you can discard the card. Like you choose by card on a card by card basis if you want to take it or discard it. So that's super cool.
That was my assessment as well, where it's like, oh, I'm so glad you there's a middle ground. You can be like, all right, I need to keep some, but I can't keep all. Because if it was all or nothing, that's like if you're stacked out or full 5, that's a non-choice. Like you have to get rid of all 5. But with this kind of gradient, you get to make a tactical choice on how much horror you can take.
Yeah, I don't think we should sleep on the Twilight Blade ability too. The fact that you could, like, say you have 2 wards, and you could potentially get like 4 ward level 2 uses in multiplayer or something like that. Like you could do a lot to really lock down the board, I feel like.
Which is interesting because so if anyone's listened to me or I don't even think you have to read
no
between
one
the
has.
lines. I generally despise control archetypes. Like, I don't mind control effects in card games. I despise control archetypes. So Diana Stanley drops. She's got 1 printed willpower, and she's a control investigator.
Yeah, let's talk about that 1 willpower for a second.
If only she had 5 agility.
How do you feel about 1 willpower now, Sean?
Do you in fact mean 6 willpower? Because that's what Diana Stanley has.
I mean 1 willpower.
So I will also say that if I'm playing Diana and I draw Stubborn Detective as my weakness,
Yes!
I'm just conceding the campaign.
I was just going to say Stubborn Detective is like her bane.
Yeah.
So what would happen with cards stacked beneath her if Stubborn Detective hits table?
I would imagine they just stay there. They just don't give you the bonus.
I'd imagine you have to tear them up.
Think that's
since she's holding a candle, you probably have to light them on
Probably
fire.
have to burn. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's only thematic.
Judge?
So, with Twilight Blade, another cool thing to look at is that the fight action doesn't exhaust it. So you can continue to fight with it after you do its awesome ability, which I think is pretty cool. But it doesn't really add anything to the fight, just lets you pick your highest stat. So.
Yep.
I am a big fan of this design all around, just because of all the pieces, how they work together is like... Because I think kind of my first inclination upon looking at it would be, well, you're doing so much work just to get to like the will that an Agnes has, say, because you got to get 4 cards under. But it's like, it's not like you're doing work for no result. Like along the way, you're playing these control cards that are doing things, and you're getting cards and resources as well. And like I like the rest of her stat line. Like it's 3s all around for the rest, which is super well balanced. And I love the 7 and 7 health and sanity stat line as well. So super balanced all around.
Now, Sean, you have to admit too that I think Matt did you a solid getting, or whoever got the art to do this. Magali did Diana Stanley.
Yeah,
which is.
And the OG Arkham Horror Diana Stanley art, she kind of looks angry and creepy. It's fine. It doesn't offend me in any way. But the Magali is so good, and it has heavy like J-Law vibes for me. So double win.
Also, because we're talking about art, I'm just going to throw this out. The hand on Twilight Blade is possibly the best hand I've seen.
Yeah, that is a well drawn hand.
It's really
like
good.
It is just. The shadowing, oh man, that art is sweet. It almost looks cell shaded, kind of, but
it does look digital, but it's still the lighting's solid.
Yeah,
I like all of the art, and the Terrible Secret is pretty cool too.
Guys, and look at I don't know if you noticed this. I did because I stared at any depiction of Diana Stanley as long as I possibly can. But in the card fan in the article, off to the side of her little set, there's another picture of her like suspended in an orb of energy. I don't know what card that's going to be, but I like it already.
Maybe there'll be a Mystic card with that art or something.
Here's hoping.
I really hate to say this because I don't want to add any fuel to Sean's fire, but...
it's a raging inferno at this point.
It's hard to say now, but she might end up being my favorite Mystic so far, just because, like, I get the Safina, like, tricksy vibe off of her, that I like those kind of investigators that you're just constantly, like, shuffling stuff around and pulling different combinations together.
And I think she's just if I assume you hit a certain critical mass of cancel and ignore effects in her deck, with that draw effect, she's going to see more cards than most Mystics, and that's huge. That is so big for consistency.
I think the fact that she gets a card and a resource off playing one of those cancels, like, that is huge. That is the biggest thing to me, is like it... Oh, that is such efficiency.
And the fact that it's once per phase and not once per turn...
Yeah,
it's
or round or
so.
I'm
Mythos,
thankful for that.
Investigator, Enemy. You can cancel in all 3 of those phases.
Yeah,
once per turn. I feel like, and again, who knows? I haven't played her yet, but it feels like that would have been slowed.
Yeah,
maybe. Depends on
Solo.
how quick the investigator.
I'm talking solo here.
Yeah. You never talk solo. I don't take anything you say.
Diana
solo.
Stanley has me talking solo. That's how excited I am.
wow. That's a big step for you.
Yeah, right?
The only thing that's not really like a detraction, but just more what I'm curious about is what her deck is going to look like. Just the questions of like, what's the critical mass of how many of these cancel ignore cards you want to include in your deck? Because you still got to include your bread and butter cards that are going to help you fight and investigate and all that. So it's definitely going to push me to include some cards that I would not include in my usual Mystic builds. So I'm looking forward to seeing what that deck shakes out to be.
Well, and the thing is, too, when you evaluate a cancel card with her, you also have to put in your head that this cancel card now also says draw a card and gain a resource.
Yeah, right.
Right? Like, Ward of Protection now says cancel this stuff, also gain +1 willpower for the rest of the game, probably, and draw a card and gain a resource. Like, that is just a bonkers card now. So.
God, I can only get so erect.
I'm right there with you, buddy.
And
Ward of Protection is like my favorite card in the game.
Yes. And I have to say, I'll gush just a little bit more before we move on, but the thematic win that is this card. 1 willpower, yes, okay, it was a roller coaster moment for me, but I accept it because it's consistent with her design in every other Arkham game that I've played her in, where that's her backstory. She joined a cult, but her story, every time you throw this deck down, you're playing through her story of redemption in gathering the willpower and righting the wrongs that she has done as part of being duped into this cult. And it's just such a flavor win.
Yeah, and I like how her weakness ties into that, like that even if she's making these strides, she has her moment of guilt that's like getting rid of some of the work she's done to like build herself up. So I don't know, yeah, it tells a cool story. I definitely feel that.
So just so everyone knows, it has been proclaimed, it hath been proclaimed that October the 12th of every year is now Diana Day. So join us in observance of this great new holiday. We'll be celebrating next year with blackjack and hookers.
Sounds good. Before we move on,
have to form a cult, and then we all have to leave the cult reluctantly.
Yeah, it's a long process. It takes a while.
After the blackjack and hookers.
I forgot. I did skip over one cool part of the box, which is that there's actually like a prologue scenario this time around. So it sounds like we're getting 3 scenarios. And in the prologue, we're not controlling our usual investigators. We're controlling these 4 random neutral people who are just for this prologue. And we don't even get a deck. We just get a hand of cards that's going to be... well, it doesn't specify what it is, so I'm not sure if it's like special cards for them or if it specifies some cards to use or whatnot. But anyway, the point is you're going to be playing through the prologue with those special characters. Penny White, Jerome Davids, Gabriela Mizra, and Valentino Rivas. So that seems like a super cool way to start a cycle. I'm excited.
Can I just say that I want Gabriela's ability on an actual investigator? I want that after an enemy attacks you, get a clue.
That's cool.
Yeah, that's very cool.
It's limited once per round. Never mind, forget it.
Valentino looks like Dapper Mac from It's Always Sunny. Throw that out there.
He's Arkham Tony Stark.
Tony Starkham?
Yeah, that's actually really good.
Oh, you loved it. Don't lie.
I did. That's
why
I'm upset.
I did call my standalone Mark deck for Arkham Knights Markham Knights.
Oh, jeez.
It's almost it's too easy, but it's still good. Like,
Never mind. All right. So that's it for the news, right? Like, not that that's not enough, but
yeah,
I think that's about all we had.
Yeah.
Now, while we had the announcement everyone's been waiting for, FFG also very quietly slid in another new, I guess, update to the game. Scott, why don't you run us through anything that's of note in the FAQ?
Well, this was it lacked the fanfare of Diana coming out because there wasn't even an article saying, hey, we updated the FAQ. Like, it was just, they updated it and I think Matt mentioned it on the Discord, like, hey guys, just so you know. So it wasn't, I think the reason it wasn't really announced, it wasn't a huge change in a lot of things. One of the biggest things they did is they kind of fixed a few cards and clarified a few cards. So I'll just run through those really quick. Shortcut level 2 used to not work because, like, I think everyone was playing it as it was designed to be played, but by the rules, if I were to put it on a location, Nick, you could not trigger it because it's still my card. So now it says any investigator, it's errated to say any investigator at this location may trigger this ability. They errated time warp to just make sure that you don't, when they say undo the action, you're not undoing time warp as well, so you can just infinitely time warp. Because people would do that.
A one-card infinite loop.
Yes.
These are the kind of people I would not like to play an RPG with.
Right, exactly. Or any game with, really.
Yeah. Realm of Madness from the Carcosa campaign got errated, so it works more like Corrosion, where you can't sacrifice your friends' stuff. So it's just limited to you. Father Mateo now actually works because he used to be after an investigator reveals the tentacle token.
Oh.
But that's too late. So now it's when an investigator. So before, yeah. Yodel now says his ability is once per phase, not once per turn. Because turn would be, if you're in a one-player game, there's one turn, but in a four-player game, there's 4 turns. So now it's once per phase, so you can, even if you're playing solo, you get the same amount as if you're playing 4-player. The amount of times you can use this thing. And then Barricade level 3, just clarified non-elite for the spawning, because it used to just say when an enemy would spawn, you could move it. It's now non-elite. So... yeah.
Oh.
Did we need to weaken Barricade, though?
I mean, it...
that does weaken it, doesn't it?
Slightly, I think. I mean, like, so if an elite enemy spawns on you now, it just comes in to Barricade.
Okay, alright.
It's got the key.
Right.
Yeah.
It found it under the mat.
Yeah.
Your hide a rock.
So I'll jump into with Skeleton Key right now. So there's kind of a rules thing going on with Skeleton Key. So most people are playing it the way, you would think it functions. And I think most people, like, there's Letter of the Law and then there's Spirit of the Law, right? And everyone's playing Skeleton Key, Spirit of the Law, right? You can attach Skeleton Key to your location. If it is already attached to your location, detach it and return it to your play area instead. So here's the issue, though. As it's written, if Ian, you're at location A, and you attach Skeleton Key there, get all the clues, whatever, and then later on in the game you're at location E or F or really far away, whatever, because you still control the Skeleton Key, you can just attach Skeleton Key to your location.
Right.
From location A. Like, it just warps over.
Because cards you control don't care about where they are.
The positioning,
really. Exactly. So, Matt kind of replied to someone through the email rules question thing, basically saying, I'm just going to try and figure out how to fix this without breaking other things.
Yeah.
So, best of luck with that, Matt. The way I think he did clarify, the way he designed it to work is you have to pick it up from its location. So
yes,
yeah, you can choose how you want to play that if you want to. Yeah,
I like the idea of a warping key.
Well, I mean, it is exceptional.
Like, right? Keyholes are just little wormholes into the same pocket dimension.
A few other things: you can't shuffle a card into an empty deck. So if you would shuffle it in, it gets discarded.
That sucks.
Or it stays in its current game area. So, like Rex's Curse, if your deck is empty and it causes you to, like, trigger and shuffle into your deck, but your deck is empty, it just stays there.
That's so bad!
Roots.
So, I mean, that is such a small corner case,
but
right?
Still, it's going to happen during one game, and you're going to be like, no!
Yeah. Table flip.
It's still a gesture that it was clarified that it needs to work that way.
Exactly,
Yeah. Control of cards. So there's a difference between controllership and ownership. Owner is like who brought the card to the game, right? in the encounter deck brings its own cards. Control, if you attach a card to a player card you control, obviously you still control it. If you attach it to a player card another investigator controls, they now control that card. And then if that gun with, what's that this awesome ammo?
Custom ammunition. Awesome ammo, yeah.
Custom ammo. Yeah, and then you teamwork that gun away to someone else, they then get control of custom ammo and the gun.
Wow.
Like, if it's attached, it follows that thing.
That's a very generous Guardian player. I would never do that.
Yeah, I don't know why you would. If you attach it to an encounter card, you retain control. Now, when something leaves play, so let's say that custom ammo thing happened, if that gun leaves play for some reason, whenever a card leaves play, it goes back to its owner's out-of-play area. So if it was going back to a hand, it would go back to the planet of the person who owned it. Custom ammo would go in the discard of whoever owned it. Stuff like that.
Sounds like it's exactly as you would expect.
Most of this, and I think that's why they didn't put a big fanfare about this, it's like, this is how most people play card games and expect things to work. They're just clarifying. A big thing with premonition and resolving multiple chaos tokens. So premonition is you put into play, reveal chaos token, and put it on and seal it to premonition, right? And then the next time someone would draw a token, you resolve that one. If you use Olive McBride while you're doing that to reveal 3 and then choose 2 to resolve, 2 tokens then go on premonition, and when you trigger premonition for the draw, you resolve both of those tokens. So anytime there's multiples that would resolve, so like Grotesque Statue would not work this way, right? Because you're choosing one of 2 to resolve, so it's still just the one, not both, but because of Olive. Yeah. Couple things for Forgotten Age. I know this was a big one on our rules Discord thing. So quick thing about Explore. If you explore and cycle through the whole deck and you don't find a single location that works, it's neither pass nor fail. It just, the Explore action ends and you didn't win or lose it. If you're instructed to replay a scenario, which is, Boundary Beyond, the one after Heart of the Elders?
After Heart of the Elders is
no,
City
sorry.
of Archives.
No, Heart of the Elders.
Doom eventually has you replay as well.
Right. So if you're instructed to replay a scenario, you know how some scenarios said, next scenario, start with 3 less resources, or something like that. Every replay of that, you follow that same thing.
Bring gas.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah. He also clarified, though, that interludes or side story missions do not count. So if it said start the next scenario with 3 less resources, and then you go fight the Rougarou, it doesn't count for the Rougarou mission. You can't get around that way. So it counts for the next one in the story progression,
right?
The natural order of the campaign.
Interesting. So when we do Iron Man of Forgotten Age next year, how many times are we repeating these scenarios?
Oh God, it's funny. Is last night I actually opened up a Google Doc and I started mapping out the supplies. And I'm like, oh geez,
yeah,
it's so fucked.
Not fun.
Bring Calvin, and Calvin can just not bring blankets or provisions or anything.
I will gladly play Calvin during Forgotten Age Iron Man. I love Calvin.
Yeah, he might actually be a good one, because if he doesn't have to buy a blanket, he could buy a bunch of other things, like more medicine, or something, anything.
Or something.
Yeah. So, that's the rules.
Awesome. So that we'll move on then to our main topic, which is the weakness discussion. We're talking about the weaknesses in the game, basic weaknesses, investigator weaknesses, scenario weaknesses, and kind of how we play around them and that sort of thing, our strategies with it. So I think really quick, since this is probably the shorter list than talking about the weaknesses we hate, let's talk about the weaknesses that we're actually okay if we get. I have said this since it was spoiled, since it was revealed in a release article, and I still hold true that Indebted is my absolute favorite weakness in the game, because it sits in play, you feel it right away at the beginning, and that is it. And if you're playing campaign, and that's your random weakness, then all you have is your investigator weakness in the deck, and that's it. And you don't have to worry about drawing into, Final Rhapsody or something like that. Thoughts?
And as you go through the campaign and you upgrade, you can be like, well, I have Indebted, so I just know I need to upgrade into a lower curve.
Yes,
lower cost curve.
Or spend experience on an upgraded emergency cache or something like that. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I know some people. It's maybe for certain investigators where you're really like it's all about just getting cash, but for the most part, I'm happy to get Indebted versus almost any other weakness.
Yeah, so in anybody except for Jenny, it's the best weakness to get.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Wait, really? Doesn't Jenny bounce back the fastest?
Well, yeah,
that's true too, I suppose. I was just thinking that most builds for Jenny rely on having a big stack of cash just sitting there and starting that further back. Yeah, so, but, I mean, even still, like, the fact that it removes the concern of when it's going to hit, and not only that, but it only hits you at the absolute beginning of the game, like, to me, that's the softest blow out of all of the weaknesses, personally.
Yeah. And one thing, too, is, I think, I kind of forget this, too, when looking at weaknesses, is weaknesses also steal a card draw from you, right? Especially if you draw it during the upkeep phase. Like, Indebted doesn't do that.
Right.
So you're keeping that card draw, which in the click economy, Sean, is... No, I'm just kidding. Right? Like, that's another part of a weakness.
Right, well, okay, so it doesn't need to be click economy, guys. It's just the fact that actions are the most valuable currency that we have. We don't need to go deeper than that. Actions are more valuable than everything else.
I triggered him.
That wasn't that hard.
Is it? Did anyone expect it to be that hard?
I really wish Diana Stanley's subtitle was Click Economy. And she had 0 will. Anyway.
Diana Stanley,
weakness.
The click economist.
Yeah.
Traded cultist and click.
So are there any other weaknesses that when you draw them for your deck, you're like, oh, like any that you would draw for almost any deck, let's say. So not
Psychosis
specific.
and hypochondria.
Yeah.
They don't worry me that much.
Sure.
Like as opposed to, I think the closest analog to them would be internal injury or chronophobia, where like that hops out, it kind of demands you address it right away.
Yeah.
As long as you're comfortable where you're sitting, you can kind of let psychosis and hypochondria ride for a little bit.
Yeah, unless you're playing an investigator who has super low will and high health, or vice versa, and then you get the specific one that hits opposite. Like that could be a problem, but yeah, you're right. Those you're usually fine just letting them sit there and sit on your board state.
Or when you get the pair, it's more fun when you have psychosis and then you have chronophobia as well.
Oh,
it's like, oh well, now things have gotten weird.
Remember when hypochondria and was it
Psychosis?
The loop of death.
The loop of death. Before Matt threw everyone a bone and was like, "Okay, they only trigger once."
Oh man, that's
because it could happen in the core set.
Yeah, that's so good.
On Devourer Below, it's just like, and you're dead.
Oh, I miss those days. All right. So, any of the basic weaknesses that we think are like the absolute worst or the hardest hitting, the ones that affect every deck considerably awfully.
Overzealous.
Overzealous. I knew that was going to be and everybody now. Overzealous.
So, this is a thing for me. I've been playing a lot of Lord of the Rings this weekend.
I'm sorry.
My common theme is, and that needs surge? Why does that surge? So yeah, Overzealous is definitely, when I pull that, I'm like, oh god, here we go.
Yeah. And so if you draw a card with surge already, does that add an additional instance of surge?
No, the card they don't stack. Like,
okay.
The card can have 14 surges on it, but it only surges into the next card.
Dang it.
Yeah,
but if the next card that it surges into
next card has
surge.
Yep, that surges then.
Which happened to me with...
Definitely has happened.
That happened to me with Ursula, where I drew like 4 cards. That's ridiculous, because the second card kept surging into other surge. It was rough. Yeah. It's a bad card.
Whenever stuff like that happens, I just have this, like... I do a lot of meme stuff, but I have this image of a GIF in my head of like Overzealous, like Stone Cold Stunnering, like Ursula or something. Like just... Oh god,
that's hilarious. So when you're building your decks and when you're planning, now obviously the most recent planning most of us have done has been for Iron Man. Most of us is in the hosts, so that's a little different. But when you're planning a deck and when you're building a deck, how much do you take into account the weaknesses and think like, well, obviously it's a random draw, and technically you draw after you build your deck, right?
Okay, that was what I was going to ask. Is there an official rule on that? Because that actually affects things.
I've always drawn after I built the deck.
Yeah, it's at the end.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
that's how I've run it too.
It's
I feel
somewhere
like
in
if
the
you
rules
can tech
reference.
against your basic weakness, that kind of defeats the point.
Right.
No.
But I guess the question is how you play around it once you know it's there, and if you upgrade into anything to counteract it.
Unless it's an enemy and I'm playing an investigator that has trouble dealing with enemies, that's the only time I really plan around it. I haven't tried, what's the name? Doomed, or not Price of Failure, but the other one. I haven't tried those campaign weaknesses yet. I would imagine those you would have to plan around.
Dark Pact isn't too bad. It's but I will say when I have drawn Doomed, I generally tech around it by conceding the campaign.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, Doomed, like, I hate it so much, but I love that it exists.
Yeah, no, I agree. The design is wonderful.
Yes.
Like, if I'm feeling just nihilistic and really want a wild experience, yeah, I'll throw Doomed in. That's fine.
That one would be one I would tech around. Like if I had Mystic access, I would, and didn't have Alyssa already, then I would swap in Alyssa like as soon as I could. That would be my teching, and just always use her to try to avoid Doomed.
Or scrying and Yaddle in Agnes. That's a thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a very effective thing, but it is a thing.
Right. So does Doomed really, like, does that affect your campaigns? Because again, I haven't played with it. Have you guys played with it to the point, like, and actually tried it throughout multiple scenarios to where it's been that big of an issue?
Yes.
I feel like if you're playing a shorter campaign, it's not that big a deal, but in our standard 8 scenario campaigns, if you're playing a deck that draws any amount of cards, it's a threat.
Yep.
Okay.
Well, that was my problem with Ursula and Seeker. Like, the very first campaign I had Forgotten Age, I got Doomed, and, like, it's a very draw-heavy deck, like most Seekers are. So I was already one step away from death at the end of Doom of Esley, so I just straight up restarted the campaign. I'm like, nope. So I think if you get it in a investigator that's not super draw-heavy, then you probably can do some things, but I plan to just do the same thing. If I ever draw it again in a Seeker draw heavy deck, I'm just drawing a different weakness. There's no point to like playing 2 scenarios and then having to redo it all over again.
And for Iron Man, we'll have a psychiatrist on call to offer counsel to anyone who draws Doomed for Iron Man.
So, because Doomed now exists and because it can ruin people's day, I was actually thinking of this for Iron Man. Do we want to have an optional rule that once everyone's drawn their basic weakness, as a group, you can mulligan all of your basic weaknesses, you have to shuffle them all back in and draw another one, but then you have to keep those. So if someone else draws Doomed again, it's stuck.
I'll be honest, this is just a personal house rule, just to make sure that I generally have a better time.
Yep.
When I draw basic weaknesses, I pull 2 and pick one. And
That's what I do too.
I don't necessarily pick one that I feel is going to be the easiest. But if I draw I'm trying to think of a good example here.
So
but if I draw one that's just going to make sure I have a really bad time, like if I draw Stubborn Detective and Diana, I will pick the other one. Or I don't know if you guys have this experience as well. I have one weakness that I always seem to see, like above all other weaknesses, and for me that weakness is chronophobia.
Yes,
that thing fucking shows up
it
so
does
often
show up
in
a
my
lot.
That was why I started doing that, was because I got tired of playing 2-player games with my wife, and one of us always had chronophobia. Because it's not that it's a bad card, it's just that I think it's kind of uninteresting as a weakness. Like, it's just end your turn, take a horror, and then spend 2 actions to get rid of it. So I'm like...
Is it that there's 2 copies in the pool? Because there's 2
but there's
copies
also
that
2
came out
copies
of
of
Dunwich,
internal
right?
injury, and I never see
That's
internal
true.
injury.
That's true.
I don't know what it is. It's just a lighter card. It floats to the top of the stack.
Yeah.
I guess. I have no better explanation, so I'll accept it.
We know that's how it works.
I do like the idea, Sean, that like where you draw 2 and take 1, just because like now that there's so many weaknesses,
Right.
I find that there's some like I haven't played with that basic weakness in a very long time, and I would like to.
Yeah, full disclosure. That's what I'm going to be doing for Iron Man. So,
Yeah, I think that, you know what, anyone listening who's doing Iron Man, I'm cool if everyone wants to draw 2, pick 1. Just because, like, also you're putting a lot of eggs in one basket for Iron Man for that day. Like, let's have fun.
Yeah.
Like, if finishing is winning, like, let's
Scott
just get
hath
there.
spoken, and thus it shall be. Okay, so this isn't on our show notes, but do you guys have any weaknesses that when they show up, when you draw them, you don't cringe, you don't sigh in relief, but you roll your eyes?
like when they show up in the game, or when I'm building my deck.
Yeah, when you pull it to build your deck. I'll volunteer mine. When I pull the thing that follows, I'd go, ugh.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite weaknesses, just from a design. Like, I love how it works. I love that. So if I pull it in a deck, I'm usually just like, that's fine. Like, because I like playing around this.
Mm-hmm.
It's one that seems kind of like, not harmless, but fine at first glance. And then when you actually play it, there's times where it screws you just because it keeps like getting shuffled back into your small little deck. It keeps popping out at the wrong time. Mm-hmm. So it's an interesting one.
I'm generally like, whenever I draw one of the enemy weaknesses, I kind of like,
yeah,
I like them. I think they're awesomely designed, most of them. Actually, all of them. Like, the thing that follows is a fantastic design. Mm-hmm. But I like the idea of a weakness not being a physical thing. You know what I mean? Sure. Like, I guess internal injury is technically physical, but like it's within your head or within your body, or something going on around you.
So you prefer to conceive of them as character flaws?
Yeah, as opposed to a physical character.
Mm-hmm. I see that. I still, Stubborn Detective is still my favorite basic weakness design that has been done. I hate it, and I roll my eyes when I draw it, but I love the design of that card.
I really don't like Mob Enforcer. I think he's probably my least favorite of the characters. Like, you can spend the resources to get rid of him, but the only few times that I've actually pulled him is when I don't have the resources to spend, and then it's like, 4 fight, 3 health. Like, come on, man.
I feel like
it'd be a shame if someone busted that magnifying glass.
They always seem to show up at the worst times when you're like, okay, I got my actions set up to kill this enemy next turn, and then they pop up right at that moment. Like, any of the enemy weaknesses, really. It's just because, like, there's a good chunk of the weaknesses that are what I would consider just, like, lump into the category of the 2 actioners, which you just spend 2 actions and they go away. But the enemy weaknesses are kind of like 2 actions plus. Like, you're probably going to spend 2 actions to get rid of them because most of them have 3 health. Do all of them have 3 health? Who am I forgetting?
No, the Stubborn Detective and Thing That Follows both have 2.
Well, at least 2 of them. So you're probably going to spend 2 actions, but then you also got to spend maybe some cards to the test for the fight test, or
maybe some ammo.
Yeah, so they're kind of they tax you a bit more than a lot of the other weaknesses, I feel like.
Plus, that's 2 actions where you're taking tests, not just 2 actions getting rid of it.
Yeah, they're not assured.
2 more actions being exposed to the evil of the chaos bag.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Oh, look, the elder thing. -8, destroy your deck. Oh, great, yeah.
The best part of the Stubborn Detective
attacks me
is that the Stubborn Detective has become a meme at this point. Like, all the weird places he shows up, like...
Yeah.
Yes.
In a rowboat in Venice and in other dimensions.
Or the mob enforcer, like, dude, that mob boss is very motivated for his money and also has a very good rapport with his employees.
That enforcer is just really gunning for a promotion.
Just shows up in Carcosa.
We should do a contest where we have, like, the best stubborn detective stories, like, places that we showed up.
I just like the idea of having people take pictures with their stubborn detective cards at different places in the world. Like next to national monuments and crap.
In my bathroom.
Make it happen, Internet.
So, what about investigator weaknesses? Which investigator-specific weaknesses do we think are particularly punishing, and how do we deal with that? Other than not playing that investigator.
I hate Baron Samedi.
I hate Baron Samedi as well.
I've never played with Marie, so I wouldn't know,
douche.
but he seems awful.
And just the, like, to get rid of him is such a tax, right? Like, you play this Doom thing, but, like, what if you get him to, like, 2 Doom, and then you draw, like, a couple Ancient Evils, and then it resets everything, and you're like, awesome, I just put so much towards Baron Samedi, and it just screwed us over. Yeah, it just... Yeah.
I will say, there might be a day where this is untrue, but if Agnes Baker ever gets replacement cards, we will never ever look back. Because her signature asset is eh.
Yeah.
And her weakness is so rough
It's rough.
sometimes.
It's a player card version of Ancient Evils.
That you have to pay two reserves and an action to play.
You gotta pay for the pleasure of the Doom.
Yeah.
God.
And if you can't for some reason, then you're taking some horror, which, maybe not the worst thing in Agnes, but it adds up quickly because she's already spending her horror to deal damage a lot, so...
I don't know if anyone, or how many people have played around with Carolyn. Carolyn is one where the weakness, it oscillates between being almost nothing to being the worst thing anyone could have drawn right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's the one where if someone takes... Is it someone takes horror, it puts a doom if it's not healed by the end of the turn?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
It attaches to the agenda, and it deals a direct horror to Carolyn. And then at the end of the round, if any horror was assigned to Investigator that was not healed, place a doom on the attached agenda. So.
Oh god, in 4-player, that's a nightmare.
Yes, yeah, I know. Carolyn's just going nuts, just trying to make sure that everyone else is staying okay.
That one is so timing specific. Like, if it hits, like, during the witching hour right before it advances, you're like, score! But if it hits on, like, a 10 doom threshold agenda at the very beginning.
And given the iffiness of foolishness, which is the weirdest thing I've said today, when her normal cards come out, I have a feeling her replacements are going to get ignored for a large portion of her decks.
Yeah.
And another one, too, is Jenny with Sacrificial Beast.
Mm-hmm.
That one really just kind of shuts Jenny down a lot more than Searching for Izzy did.
That card's such a fucking bummer.
Oh, it so is. And the fact that it comes in the set that doesn't have the 45s, then you have to include Searching for Izzy in the 45s just so you have, like, you have that built-in answer to deal with it. It's so frustrating.
I've seen, some discussion of which is worse, and I'm actually slightly mystified when people say Sacrificial Beast isn't a big deal, because the times I've had it come up, it's always been such a huge... Because the problem is it also spawns at the location farthest from you. Mm-hmm. So you have to get over there all the while...
And it doesn't hunt!
Yeah, and it doesn't hunt. There. And all the, of course Jenny has ways to move, elusive, yada yada, but still, it's a problem if you don't have those and you're not gaining resources, and so Jenny doesn't have the things she uses to kill things. She can't pour as many resources into physical training or whatever she's doing to bump up her combat, and it has 4 fight, so it's rough.
Mm-hmm.
So I see that in our show notes, someone put Voice of the Messenger down as one of the worst weaknesses. I
put that down not necessarily as one of the worst, but one that's like that you have to think about more so than some of the other investigator weaknesses.
I actually really like Voice of the Messenger. Now, granted, I haven't played Calvin in a campaign setting. I've only played him in a few standalones. But in those standalones, when I get Voice of the Messenger, I'm like, sick!
Yeah, I think one of the main ways that it affects you is that you can't go like right up to the line until it pops out. So it kind of restricts like how far you can boost them once it pops out. As long as you don't think there's any other sources of direct damage around, then you can, or direct horror around, then you can kind of, But
unless you've got a Diana Stanley by your side.
Yeah, but then it just goes back in the deck and you have to prepare for it again. 0 out of 10 would not play Diana Stanley.
I'm too tickled to be angry.
I think with Voice of the Messenger, too, one thing I found over the games I've played with Calvin is I tend to think more of the long term and not the short term, because I know I've either watched playthroughs or listened to one on some other podcast where he's playing Calvin, and he kind of looked at it and said, well, I'm kind of at this for damage, I'm kind of at this for horror right now. I think I could use this, and I think I could use an extra horror to get my investigate up or whatever. And in my head, I'm screaming. I'm like, no, you already have like 3 sanity trauma, right? Like, you need to think long term. You can get that sanity damage some way else. Like, think long term, because Calvin is going to accumulate trauma.
Yeah.
Try to balance that out.
Yeah.
And if it knocks you, if it gets you really close to danger in a game, then so be it. But I always think long term with this card.
Yeah, you kind of have to
Perseverance
balance.
counters that, right? If it would be a knockout punch.
Yeah.
Does it cancel trauma? Is that considered to be damage or horror?
No, because trauma doesn't hit your card, so it would
Trauma's
cancel
just a
the
campaign note. Basically.
Oh, so you don't actually take damage or horror in that moment?
You take the one direct, but you don't take anything for trauma. You just record that you have an extra trauma.
Yeah. Because Voice of the Messenger, you take 1 direct damage and suffer 1 physical trauma.
Ah, okay.
It's kind of like
it
when
says
in the,
both. Okay, I was confused.
Yeah, it's like in the train in Essex when you jump across. You get the trauma, but it doesn't do anything to you in the moment.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you guys. I'm long overdue to try Calvin out. It's time.
Oh, he's so fun. Solo Calvin is a very interesting build, but it's fun.
That sounds like it would just make me produce a lot of stomach acid.
It's so fun, though!
I've definitely had to ride the line where I can't remember the exact situation, but I had to fight a boss, and I basically let myself get boosted up to 1 defeat on each, with Voice of the Messenger still in the deck. So it was just a gamble I had to take because I really needed those extra stats, but I knew if I drew the weakness, that was curtains. So it's always a gambling game with Calvin.
If you take Calvin, like, go through a first scenario and then immediately go to fight the Rougarou and intend to get the monstrous transformation, oh my god, he turns into a beast.
Oh, that's so cool.
Literally and figuratively.
It's like, oh sweet, I have like 4 damage on me. Okay, I'm swinging for 9 combat.
With an extra damage. There's something about Calvin as a character that's just so captivating that has nothing to do with like backstory. It's just, who is this dude that's just taking all this punishment and just rattling around and continuing on? It's very interesting.
Yeah, agreed. I've been saving his Spotify playlist for last because it's probably my favorite one that I've cobbled together because it's such a
Please Hurt So Good,
character.
right? Hurt So Good is on that one.
There's lots of hurting related songs for sure.
And then next one on the list is Call of the Unknown, which is Ursula's. That one's really rough. Like, okay, so you can attach it to any other location, so you could put it right next to you. But if you don't successfully investigate, then it just goes back. You take the horror, and then it's going to come back out eventually as well.
Well, it's even worse than that. It goes into your threat area, and every turn you've got to put a target on a new location.
Yeah, see, that's the worst part of this weakness, is you have to remember at the beginning of your turn to choose a location that you think you're going to go to. Because the amount of times I've played Ursula and had it out, and I'm just like, oh shoot, I forgot to choose a location. Well, obviously I would have chosen that one, but
later in a campaign, it's not quite as bad because at that point you've got your Pathfinders. You've got her in like full pinball mode, But in the first couple scenarios, this is another one of those ones that just sits here and taunts you until it hits you. I honestly, when I build Ursula now, I tend to go logical reasonings. I tend her relics have some horror soak. I just let this hit me most of the time if I can afford to, because then it's not just dictating how I play for the next 5 turns.
Yeah.
So
I'll tell you where it's bad is solo Ursula in explore scenarios, because generally you're going one by one location scooping up the clues, right? And so at the beginning of the turn, there's usually not another location around that you can choose. And so you're just going to have to take it on the chin, and, it's going to shuffle back into your deck, but it's probably going to come up again at some point, so.
Right. I had a point that I was going to bring up, and now someone dropped something upstairs. Now I suddenly can't remember what I was going to say. So I guess we'll move on.
I think... And I'm sorry, I went away for a little bit, so I'm sorry if someone else has said it, but one other interesting thing about weaknesses, signature weaknesses in general, is that any of the task weaknesses just don't matter in standalone.
Yep,
You can
exactly.
just straight up ignore them.
Roland, Jenny, Skids.
Kachi.
One thing I'd say about Skids' weakness too, hospital debts, I do like that other players can help you pay for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, that's really handy.
Skids GoFundMe page.
Yeah. Skids has a Patreon.
Yeah, that's
through some of the other signature weaknesses. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Ian.
I was just going to say that's part of the weaknesses we haven't mentioned in general for any of the kind of just the ways that other investigators can kind of help you with those.
All right, I'll be up in a little bit. Okay, big guy.
Or with taking care of your enemy weakness, whereas in solo you're all on your own.
Abandoned and alone, perhaps. All right. I'm trying to think what else. What else we haven't covered up.
King in Yellow is brutal.
I was just looking at that.
Yeah.
I don't have a whole lot of Min under my belt, which is probably the second weirdest thing I've said today.
Yeah.
But when that has hit, it's all of a sudden like, oh god. All right, I guess I'm drawing as often as I can now.
I think one thing too is like there's some of these weaknesses that take up a slot, and those ones like just dig the knife in just a little bit deeper, right? And like that's one of the reasons Baron Samedi is so horrible is he takes your ally slot, right? Like allies are usually expensive and they're usually pretty good, and you want to keep them around for a while. And then King in Yellow, Necronomicon will take a hand. Like it just those ones kind of get me a bit more.
Definitely.
Do you guys, when you're playing Daisy, I find times there's, like, sometimes I'll ignore the Necronomicon.
Oh, almost always.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Because how often are you drawing that? I mean, granted, once the Necronomicon hits table, you're drawing the Elder Sign 3 times as many times.
Oh, constantly.
Yes.
But, I mean, most of the time, it's usually, like, something where if I'm playing multiplayer and everyone else has stuff taken care of and I'm just, like, caught in a location with no clues, it's like, well, I guess I'll just do this, Guess I'll work on the Necronomicon.
Yeah, like if I'm in a good spot, at least it's a tome. At least all it eats up is your free action. But I would say, nowadays with it's not Dunwich anymore, where you just have extra actions. Sometimes I ignore it a lot.
Yeah,
and it does suck that it booted out my second magnifying glass.
Yeah. Well, if you get her tote bag out instead of committing it to a skill.
What? It can be played?
Yeah.
It takes up the skill slot.
The skill slot. Love it.
One thing I always do, too, is whenever I draw the Elder Sign and the Necronomicon is out, I'm like, oh, sweet, I get to draw cards. And the Necronomicon's a tome. And then I'm like, oh, wait.
Yeah.
Damn it. Like, every time. I've played Daisy so much. And every single time I have to... Oh, I hate myself. What about Serpents of Yig? Sealing the Elder Sign.
That one, I would say in particular, sealing the Elder Sign is not terrible, because again, no one's counting on that as part of their strategy. What I will say is Serpents of Yeeg, specifically in Mateo, the fact that it has 3 health is a real bummer.
Yeah, that sucks.
And
You're probably having to use like 2 shriveling charges on the stupid thing, you know?
Yeah. And I would say that sealing the Elder Sign, like, we're able to recognize that mechanically that's not a huge swing, but I think morally, especially with players who don't play that often, like, it's going to feel pretty bad. And even, honestly, even in my game, like, if that happened, if I pulled him and he suddenly seals the Elder Sign, I would just be like, God, I gotta take care of that guy so that thing's back in the bag. You know what I mean? Even though I know at my core that's not a huge detriment.
And at least Mateo has the counter where if you're able to get the Codex out first, then Serpents of Yeeg can't go snag it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's just being an enemy weakness. Like we talked about how enemy weaknesses feel a little bit worse, and
especially for those investigators with just low naked fight.
Right, because if you get like Graveyard Ghouls in York isn't a huge deal because York can fight, you know, most of the time. But Serpents of Yeeg feels a lot worse than Mateo.
So I was just looking through the list of weaknesses, and I think I've come up with what I think possibly is the most backbreaking.
Yes, okay,
weakness.
I agree. Before you say it, lay it on us.
Crisis of Identity.
Yes, sir.
Really?
Holy yes!
I disagreed.
If
you
Lola
have
would
your
be a different investigator without that weakness.
She would be, but okay, here's the thing. I played her in Iron Man, and I think that hit me... It hit me multiple times, but I think the one time it hit me and I felt terrible... And I think it only happened once out of 8 scenarios in a row. Like,
well,
this is... It's not that bad, because you can play around this super easily, simply by making more of a temporary Lola.
You can play around it if you're not playing solo. Because I think in solo, you are switching those roles because you have to play cards. Whereas I think, like, 4-player, you can be like, well, I want to play around Crisis of Identity more than I want to get this single clue over here. The clue guy can go get that one or something. Right? You know what I mean? Like, it's backbreaking.
And I think it's a weakness that the threat of its existence is more powerful than it itself. Because it requires... There's 2 copies in the deck, and it is a big threat, so it requires that you play around it, which dictates how you play Lola anyway. So I feel like the effect that the threat of it has is bigger than when it actually hits, if that makes sense.
But aren't when you're building Lola decks, and if you're okay, all right, this is weird because you can build so many different versions of Lola. But the version of Lola that I go for is the one that's all about passive buffs, which means that you don't have to be on a specific class in order to, get the best out of your cards that are in play. So I'm not going to be on Guardian 90% of the time because I don't need to necessarily activate actions on my Guardian cards. Like, it's painful, but I don't think it's the worst out of all the out of all the investigator cards. I don't think, personally. I don't like to fight the Black Wind more than I don't like this. And I don't like Sacrificial Beast more than I don't like this. To me, those are more crippling.
I think I'm with Nick on this one, and it might be because of the Lola that I was most recently playing, so maybe it depends on what kind of Lola you build. I was playing Lola 2-handed, and so mostly her deck is focused, like her main assets are Guardian, and most of her cards are focused around like Clover type events, like Look What I Found, and Working at Hunch, all those kind of things. So a lot of times, as long as I wasn't on Guardian at the end of my turn, like I would usually be in Survivor or Seeker just to play these events or in one-time effects. Like it would pop up and not really do anything to me, like 80% of the time.
But again, that caveat that if I wasn't Survivor or I wasn't Guardian at the end of my turn, it dictates the choices you make in switching roles.
But if you're taking that argument, then doesn't every investigator's weakness dictate the choices that you make?
Yes, but I think this is to the biggest extent.
But I would also say that I don't... Okay, all right, let's say I'm playing Lola, and I have a bunch of Guardian assets in play, and I have Rogue cards in hand, and I switch to Rogue at the end of my turn. I don't do that because Crisis of Identity could come up. I do that because I want to be able to react to whatever the encounter deck could throw at me. You know what I mean? Like, you're going to be switching to a different class, but often you're going to be doing it for reasons that aren't necessarily Crisis of Identity. It's just that those reasons coincide with the fact that Crisis of Identity is a threat.
I guess
think,
maybe I'm just a more defensive player.
I am too, Sean. I totally get you because like Nick and Ian are wrong. But I think I get what you're saying too, and I think I couldn't put it into words, but now I finally get it. It makes you play suboptimally, right? Like
I don't think it does.
Well, and not every turn.
No,
but there are times you go, oh, I have to think about Crisis of Identity right now, even though it hasn't been drawn yet.
I've never thought that way playing Lola.
Really?
I've never thought, oh, what if Crisis comes up? I never think that way. Because here's the thing, but that's kind of my philosophy with weaknesses in general, is I don't think, what if it comes up? Because it's probably going to come up. So I'm just going to play the game, and I'm just going to do the best things I can do, and then if the weakness comes up, it hits me, and then I just have to recover. Like, that's how I treat literally every game I play. I don't draw cards because the weakness is in my deck, you know what I mean? If I need cards, I'm going to draw cards.
But I think the difference is, like, there comes a time where you look at your board and you're like, if Crisis of Identity comes up, I'm screwed, right? Like, in a certain role. And so you choose to get out of that role, right? Like,
but
if you're...
Again... Shouldn't you be building your deck so that your reaction cards, the cards that you want to be able to play to respond to the encounter deck, are a different class than your board state?
Yes, but what if you already switched your role earlier in the turn because you had to deal with a different threat?
Well, then you're just bad
that
at
turn.
planning.
Oh, okay.
No. Then, okay, all right, without being a dick, then it comes down to you need to build Lola so that your board state are passive buffs you don't need to trigger. I'm gonna hammer home that is best Lola. Are things that you don't need to be.
Oh, I agree.
So, I totally agree.
I
need to do more than one damage.
You had to play one down.
But what? Like, I don't put those in my deck. I rely on events to get the extra damage, to get the extra clues, and I rely on my assets to give me passive buffs. Even if it's an asset like Beat Cop that has that triggered ability, 90% of the time I don't use it. You know what I mean? Because Beat Cop is just out there to give me that +1 combat.
Interesting. I did not expect the divide.
I guess for me, like, I see what you guys are saying, Sean and Scott. Like, I think it's the most consistently impactful. I'll say that. Like, it's the one. I guess part of it too is because I just think of it as part of Lola's design. Like, that's how they try to constrain her. But
just as a quick follow-up,
okay,
where do you think she sits on the power scale at the moment?
On the lower end, granted. But here's the thing: I think some of the others, like Sacrificial Beast and Black Wind, can single-handedly swing a game and make you lose it. Yes. Where I don't think Crisis of Identity will do that, at least all at one moment. Like, it's the most consistently impactful across the course of a game. But I think there are others that are more hard-hitting, like when they pop up.
Agreed.
Interesting. Yeah, I know.
And let's look at it this way: if she had any other type of, like, if Crisis of Identity wasn't her signature weakness, then I think she would be a lot higher on the power scale. So I think that this needs to be there. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. But like, that's just proving the point.
Yeah, I know.
Wait, so you want her to be broken? I don't want her to be broken. I want her to be balanced.
I don't think she'd be broken.
I'd like her to be good.
I think she'd be broken.
Old boat anchor Lola holding down the team.
Oh, shut up! I played right next to you for 8 scenarios, and I did the 25% that I needed to do.
Yeah, but that was Dunwich.
Fair.
All right, agree to disagree.
I'm not saying she's tier 1. That's obvious. I'm not even saying she's tier 2. She's top end of tier 3.
I think it's safe to say, as a group, we are indeed having a crisis over Crisis of Identity.
Fair.
So, I want to bring up one more category, is the immediate possibility of just losing a scenario right away due to Final Rhapsody and Shell Shock. Because Shell Shock has ruined my day. Possibly more than Crisis of Identity, but only because it's like...
Really? That's interesting.
Well, but Crisis of Identity is... Here's the thing. Crisis of Identity just turns off... Like, it destroys your tableau so you can't do anything, and then the encounter deck kills you. Whereas Shell Shock is just like, hey, by the way, your game's over. Like...
I think I've been generally lucky to draw it earlier, more often than not.
I've definitely
But
whiffed on it.
I definitely see how that could happen in an instant. Because, with Mark, you're riding that line. Like, I'm generally sitting at, 3 to 4 damage most times. And if you've had a rough time with horror up to that point and don't have a soak ready, yeah, that's just done now.
Yeah.
And Final Rhapsody. Final Rhapsody.
Final Rhapsody is just rough.
It can be rough. It can also just be hilariously like, okay, cool. I drove. Yeah. All it did was take away a card draw from me.
Right.
So at Con of the Rings this weekend, I taught player Arkham, and I handed him the jankiest deck I've ever built, which is Jim token manipulation, and he pulled Final Rhapsody pretty early on, and read it, and then just kind of looked up at me with wide eyes, and he's like, "Can I have the bag?" And it ended up being nothing. It ended up being a damage and a horror, and it was like, all right, yep, that's generally my experience. It's not that bad, but this could be horrendous.
Yeah, I think I've been lucky enough to not get hit much by either of these, which could just be a kind of luck of the draw type thing. I feel like in general, though, if I could pick, I would rather have one of these like one time possibly try to knock you out effects than these ones that just tax you. Like the taxing weaknesses are the worst in my opinion, that just slow you down too much.
Agreed.
Because they steal your actions.
Yeah, all this does is it threatens you with, at worst, 3 and 3, which is a pretty heavy hit. Or I guess if you're in Carcosa, it's 4 and 4.
Yeah.
But
the most I've ever taken is 3 and 3, but it's usually 1, maybe 2.
Well, exactly, yeah. So I would much rather have that than someone kick out my ally and force me to add Doom. Like, like that's not stealing actions, that's stealing entire rounds from you until he's gone.
Yeah.
The Abandoned and Alone for Windy is one that has knocked me out because it's too direct horror. So unlike the other ones which are not direct, so you can't even soak it with an ally. Like if you're getting close to 2, that's just a immediate knockout punch. Unless thankfully there's some cards now that let you like Devil's Luck and Perseverance that can.
Well, an Abandoned and Alone can like not only the 2 horror, but this could like cripple your deck. Like just straight up. Like if depending on when it hits, if this hits and you have a sizable discard pile, that's a lot of your tools that you're never seeing back.
It has, because I know me and Scott have had this discussion about the Windy Amulet deck, and I've run some decks that are really focused around our Amulet, and that it basically lost me the game because I was counting on certain cards being in my discard pile to set up this photo finish, and then they were just gone. And then my deck reshuffled, and I had like 5 or 7 cards left in it or something.
Right.
So there was just no coming back at that point.
So also throw another one. Rex's Curse is not debilitating. It's just annoying as hell.
Oh, yeah.
So obnoxious.
It's like, consistent.
It breaks the fourth wall of weaknesses because you're just like, like when we were doing Iron Man. I mean, once you get Rex like up and rolling, and I'm investigating, I'm like, okay, so I'm investing at 9 to 2. I just have to pull 2 tokens because I'm not going to fail anyways unless I draw the auto fail. It's just like every single time you're like, okay, I got to remember to draw twice, and then if you don't, and then you know, draw and then move, and you're like, oh wait, I did my turn, and then at the end of the round you're like, oh shoot, I forgot to do Rex's Curse. That could change everyone else's actions if I were to fail. Like it's
yeah, after a while you just start hoping that you fail. You're like, where's that damn tentacle?
Rex's Curse is the prove it weakness. It's like, oh, you won, prove it, do it again, check that crit.
And I think there's a bit of a juxtaposition as far as like effect and thematic implication to art, because of all of the horror and ruin that this setting could wreak upon an investigator, Rex's Curse is, there's a fly in my coffee.
That's the final proof we needed that he's OP.
Yep. Right.
Is it coffee? I think it's coffee.
It's hard to tell because it's like all mysticky and swirly and weird, so it's hard
it's
to
like
tell
coffee or maybe like a whiskey.
Yeah.
A neat whiskey, or something.
Yeah, I know.
Right,
In one of the novels I read, this is one of the older novels, Rex was quite the drinker, so maybe. Maybe it's both.
Yeah, because some people have said Rex's curse is alcoholism as well as a fly in his alcohol.
Right.
But
Yeah.
Oh, that got heavy.
I mean, that's immediately
back.
what I thought when I saw the card, because I had that story in my mind.
All right, I definitely take it all back. So I know we've kind of covered playing around weaknesses as we've gone through, but I don't think anyone has explicitly said it yet. Just as a general rule, I think with most investigators, you don't draw last action.
yeah.
Generally,
Very smart.
yeah. You don't draw and you don't advance the last action, unless you absolutely have to.
Or you know what's coming up.
Well, yeah, okay, blind plays, yeah.
Yeah.
And
Any other kind of general rules for playing around weaknesses?
I think it sounds simple.
Don't be too afraid of them.
It sounds simple, but just be aware of them. Like, know how many are in your deck, how many cards are left in your deck. So there's definitely times when I know I'm getting to, like, the bottom 15 or 10 cards of my deck, and there's still 2 in there that maybe I'm not taking draw actions anymore. Or reverse, sometimes if my board state is good and there's no enemies around and there's no pressure, sometimes I'll intentionally try to draw into them to get them out of the way when I'm free to take care of them.
Very good. So, before we wrap this thing up, any final words on weaknesses in general?
They suck.
Has anyone... have any of us... Because I don't know if all of us have... I don't know if Ian got the 13th Vision or not, but the test weakness from Arkham Knights last year. Have any of us actually played with it?
I have.
What are your thoughts on it?
I would put it in the lower half of impactful weaknesses.
Agreed.
So what does it do
I also
for
often
those
forget to check for it.
What does it do for those listeners who don't know what it is?
It sits in your play area, and investigators cannot win ties while it's in play, and it's a double action to remove.
Investigators at your location, though, right? It's not everyone.
Oh, sure, yeah. I've only played with it like a couple times, and when I've drawn it, hasn't been that big of an issue. So
yeah, ties on skill checks go to the encounter deck.
Yeah,
but it's a double actioner, so you just need to find the actions.
I suspicion that we'll see that in the Circle Undone. It seems on point for theme.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, potentially.
13th Vision. I guess final thought is that it's weird that weaknesses are both something that I don't do a ton of work planning around, but on the flip side, it's also one of such a core part of the game that it is well designed that no matter how good your board state is and how good things are going, or how close you are to victory, that they can always... It's definitely something that is always in the back of my mind when I'm deciding to draw or plan out my turns.
Yeah, that's actually one of the things that I think is so brilliant about the core design of the game, is that the fact that weaknesses exist in your deck just adds this kind of eking sense of lingering dread, for your own deck. And again, I was teaching someone Arkham at the Lord of the Rings event, and in Lord of the Rings, if you can draw a card, you draw a card. There's no reason not to ever. But I was showing him this deck and kind of explaining things. He's like, "Wait, there's treacheries in my deck?"
Well, it's funny.
It's just
go ahead.
No, it's just a really cool and I think thematic implication for the game, and it also just does the work of not necessarily weakening card draw, because I do hold that you still draw cards when you want to draw cards, but it makes you think about it, which is cool.
It's funny because now I play so much Arkham that even when I play Lord of the Rings, I still have that dread when I'm about to draw cards, and I'm like, oh wait, there's no weaknesses in here. I can draw cards, I'm okay. But it just sticks with you no matter what game you're playing.
Yeah, I think my parting thoughts are, don't let it affect your play too much. Don't worry about it too much. And then again, I'm also the person who champions the idea of the 49 experience deck, because it's fun to have the toys, and who cares if the weaknesses are there? They're going to be there anyway.
And you also think Crisis of Identity is not that bad. So
I know it's not that bad. I don't think I know. I have 8 scenarios in a row to prove it.
Scott, anything from you?
No, I just like that the game, the design of having weaknesses in the deck, like you guys have said, the fact that drawing cards is not always a good thing is just a new thing to card games in general, and I just love that part of the design.
All right, lovely. So let's wrap this up. Before we go to Tentacle Time and people tune out, though, I do want to put a couple of reminders out there. Arkham Knights is basically upon us. I'm so excited. I have very much enjoyed Con of the Rings, but I won't lie. The whole time I've had the unfaithful boyfriend meme in the back of my mind where I'm staring away at Arkham Knights from Con of the Rings. So pay attention to our social media, because we're actually going to be doing stuff with it this coming week. So follow us on Facebook, Twitter, the Gram, if you will, if you're on the fleek. And what else do we have? We won't be doing any YouTube posting at that time, but of course, as we mentioned on the last episode, Scott has been a workhorse the past few weeks in getting AV Club up to date. So if you please never and always do that again.
Oh my god!
So if you haven't yet checked out our YouTube channel, go do that. The AV Club's a really cool thing we do where we deep dive into card reviews. And if you don't like the YouTube, you can just subscribe to the Miskatonic AV Club on any of your favorite podcast aggregators. What else am I missing? Oh yeah, on Saturday, October 20th. We'll be running Iron Man, so anyone else out there who's planning to run Iron Man as well, or even just follow along, I'll be posting pictures and progress posts on our social media as we go through the campaign. Feel free to come in and comment, post your own resolutions and stories. I kind of want this to turn into a thing that is beyond Arkham Knights, because it is a really fun thing to do, even if you can't make it to Minnesota. I'm trying to think, what else am I missing, guys? Get on our Patreon if you want to be in on that contest, or just generally want to support the podcast.
If you're
check out the Abandoned and Alone series that I started. So, solo campaign series. Scott has joined me for both episodes so far for building the deck and Curtain Call. So next up will be Last King, but not this week because I'm in full Arkham Knights prep mode, but probably the week after if I'm still alive.
And Curtain Call was a great game. That was fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm not caught up. I watched the deck build episode last night as I wound down from the con, so I'm excited to see how it goes.
It is worth a watch. It is fantastic.
Because when you guys cut Premonition, a little part of me died.
That was one of the hardest cuts I've ever made, because I really wanted to see how it would work. But
all right. So then, let's move on into Tentacle Time. Scott, what's been grabbing you?
Honestly, it's been prepping for Arkham Knights and playing Arkham. I did want to mention something too, though. If you are at Arkham Knights, we did reserve the room at Joe Censor's for Saturday night after Iron Man. So if you need to go celebrate or cry, better do it with beer in your hand and around friends, because friends love crying friends. So yeah, come out to that.
We'll have party games. We might do an ad hoc little community recording if we're feeling ambitious. Who knows?
Yeah.
But it's going to be a good time. Joe Censor's is... it's a little bit of a walk from the FFG Center, but I'm sure there'll be a fair few people with
8
open
minutes
spots in cars.
Yeah. I transfer my Tentacle Time to Nick's, where hopefully we can talk about Control Gym.
Oh! Okay.
Let's just talk about Control Gym.
Okay.
Sure.
Best build, funnest thing ever, except it's boring as hell.
Right. Yeah. So we played a 4-player game of Arkham last night, and I built 4 19 experience decks. I had Mark, Ursula, Jim, and Desperate Duke. And everybody was having a blast except for me as Jim. because it was like it was so efficient, and I loved reaching in the bag and grabbing all these tokens and then being like, I want you for this test. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it would just be like, on my turn, everyone else would be taking care of everything, and I'm just like, not only is there nothing for me to do, like, if there was something, like, it was just kind of like, blah. So, part of it was probably because we were playing Return to the Gathering, because the other 3 players were brand new to the game.
Right.
So I think if we had played, like, a Forgotten Age scenario, it'd be a little closer to the wire, and, I would be a little more frantic and trying to pull my weight. But in this case, it was overwhelmingly positive, this scenario in this playthrough. So,
what were because apparently Control Gym is just a thing now, because like I mentioned, handed someone a janky Control Gym deck. What were your splashes?
I honestly, off the top of my head, I don't remember. If I can step away for just a minute, I can grab the deck and look. But otherwise, I didn't pull any splashes during the course of the game, so even if they're in there, I don't remember what they are.
Well, while you do that, I'll tell you what my splashes were.
What did you have?
Just like pure risk mitigation, and 1 elusive, and 2 luckies, and 2 live and learns.
Oh,
it's like, I will never fail a test.
So you went hard on that. I think I better just go check. So I'll be right back.
So I'll give you mine. Mine are, so I either take an elusive or a machete.
Okay.
One of, and then I take 2 Eli Horowitz. Is it?
Ellie
Horowitz, who can get the relics.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So,
I looked at that, but and her grabbing the trumpet is cool. What? Okay, so trumpet, grotesque statues. Any other relics in that deck?
Isn't Cthulhian Stone one?
Okay.
Yeah,
yep, I did not go stone.
Mm-hmm. Oh, really? Oh, yeah. I totally go that way. And then 2 guidance to give my actions that I'm not using to someone else.
Okay, so maybe Control Gym is a loose term. I didn't necessarily go support Control Gym. I just went like, I'm going to take the bite out of the chaos bag however I can, Jim.
I like this is for like 3 to 4 player. I call him Meditation Jim because he sits there with like what are the 2 spells that lock the
Protective Incantation.
There we go. Those
and Chthonian Stone.
So you sit there and you just lock up the bag for everyone else and you just sit. And you just collect money so you can pay for the incantation and use guidance to give away your stuff, and you sit. Preferably near the middle of the map, so if you get your trumpet out, you can do some healing. But, yeah.
So I still have to... It's on my list to try, but I haven't played Gym in a while since early Carcosa, maybe? So what is the core of that build? You'd say Protective Incantation and... What else is really doing the work of the control? Chthonian Stone?
Sean, you're going to gasp at this. I actually throw in a cheeky, was it Book of Shadows? Level 3? Just so I can have some shrivelings up, maybe. In case I want to throw shriveling in.
That's cute.
Yeah.
Okay, well. I'm back.
Hi, Nick.
I was accosted by my son, so...
How dare he?
I actually don't have any splash in this deck.
Heresy.
Unused splashes.
Well, I figured between the other 3 investigators, I assumed they'd be covering everything else, and I didn't want to splash in, insurance against tests, because that's literally what this deck is this deck is entirely insurance against tests. So, yeah, I'm actually surprised that there isn't even, like, luckies in here, but I think those are in my Ashcan deck.
Well, I'll be excited to hear back on your better version 2 with splashes.
Just hopefully with more to do.
I mean, I think... Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, Desperate Duke performed wonderfully. Like, I love how that played out. Yaudel and Duke and Ashcan and just...
That's a really fun build.
It was, yeah.
Well,
all right.
I vote we have a Control Gym for Forgotten Age, just so we have a fighting chance for fighting Forgotten Age Iron Man.
Well, Diana Stanley will have been released by then, so I'm sorry, but I will not volunteer as tribute in that regard. But I'll definitely play Control Diana if anyone wants.
Can you play Diana any other way? I don't think
no,
you can.
but that's why I offered.
Yeah.
All right. Ian, what's been grabbing you?
Nothing really. I'll keep mine super short because it's been all Arkham Knights prep. Like, I have a legit spreadsheet of my upgrade plan for every single scenario, including adaptables for both.
Yes, I saw your Friday evening.
For both Safina. Yeah, that was my Friday evening for both Safina and Jenny. So, yeah, just been doing some prep. I did finish Tomb Raider, though, because I really wanted to finish it before Red Dead comes out and Arkham Knights hits. So that's all done, and it was fantastic. Loved it. And I liked that it wasn't, like, super long if you're just playing through the main story. So, yep, that's about it.
Cool. I still have to get caught up on 2, because I really liked the first one, and just kind of dropped off after that.
Mm-hmm.
As for me, I've been busy at Con of the Rings, so I suppose I'll just throw some props out here. I got to meet some listeners that I've never met before. Hi, Morton. I have a new friend from Denmark. And who else? I don't know. I should probably not mention any other names because I will forget someone. But it's been a great time. For those of you who don't know, Con of the Rings was a fan thrown. Do you throw a con? Do you prepare a con? What's the proper
fan organized convention?
There you go. A fan organized con for the Lord of the Rings LCG because Fantasy Flight OP can't be bothered to do anything on their own. And, no, I'm calling them out, man. I'm sorry. I'm sick of
you're among friends.
Anyway. It's been a great con. It's really cool because the majority of the audience actually just kind of came from the Cardboard of the Rings Discord and kind of listenership. There were a few people who came to it not knowing any of that, and it's just been a great time. There's something about the LCG communities that just makes them so generally solid. I don't know what filter it is that filters people through, but man, just such a great community. And Arkham's no exception, so I'm looking forward to Arkham Knights. It's going to be a blast. I'm just so excited. Scott, sushi on Wednesday.
Oh, I'm so excited. I where I live, like, I love sushi, especially like sashimi, like just the straight up raw fish.
Mm-hmm.
It's all frozen by the time it gets to us. Like, they have to. Like, it either comes on a plane or it's a 13-hour drive through the mountains from our nearest, like, freshwater or a place where you could get sushi fish. So whenever I'm like, I realize that Minneapolis isn't exactly the California.
I was about to say, it's not that
Tokyo.
Not that different here.
No, but you're.
Although I do believe, for just like food laws, and I have no idea how I know this, but I think tuna is accepted from the requirement that fish be at least flash frozen before it's served.
Yeah.
Again, don't ask me how I know that. But I love sushi as well.
Yeah, so I don't know if I'm more excited for Arkham Knights or All You Can Eat Sushi. So we'll see how I feel after All You Can Eat Sushi.
That is a tough.
I was going to say, Scott, when are you going to have time to eat sushi between your Iron Man of the Forgotten Age and your Iron Man of Carcosa?
I'm not doing all of them.
You realize that's basically what you proposed, though, was like, oh, let's play through the Forgotten Age up to the last scenario so you guys are caught up. And it's like, what? Like, you want to do 7 scenarios on top of our 8?
Well, now that you're coming on Friday, that's just impossible. It's not going to happen.
It was pretty close to impossible the other way, like, even if I came on Thursday.
Oh, ye of little faith.
You need 7 scenarios!
What time do you think we have?
Oh.
That's the thing about these events, man. And it happened for Con of the Rings, too. And I basically had... Because I'm not doing anything official, I'm not involved in Cardboard of the Rings anymore, I had no pre-existing plans, and it still slips away like sand through fingers.
Exactly. The thing that I'm most interested to see is, I haven't played a lot of Arkham in the last few weeks, and last year, Arkham Knights, like, killed Arkham for, like, a month for me, like, I didn't touch it. So I'm wondering if this is going to kill it again, or if it's going to, like, reinvigorate me, and like, this will be the spark in the fire that gets me to play it a lot more. But
I always put the games on freeze after a con like this. That's just, I think you're asking to burn out if you push it too hard.
Right. Well, I'm not saying I'm going to plan to. I'm just saying, like, after I get home from Arkham Knights, if I'll be like, I kind of want to play Arkham again. We'll see. Probably not. We'll
report back. All right. Well, anything else? Any parting shots, guys? Otherwise, we'll wrap this up. I'll take that for a no. So, thanks everyone for joining us for episode 46 even, of Mythos Busters, and we will see all y'all who are going to Arkham Knights at Arkham Knights. And for all you Arkham Knots, pay attention to our social media and know that we're all thinking of you too. Alright, thanks guys, we'll see you next time.
What happened there?
I don't know why that pause got so awkward, but I definitely made it weird.
Like, it was a goodbye, and then a pause, and then a chuckling half goodbye. Like,
it was a Minnesota goodbye when no one's in the room with you.
Man, you guys make me feel lazy when it comes to Arkham Knights planning. Because I, built the level 0 deck, and now I just plan to bring all the upgrades.
Oh, jeez.
Surely you have at least a rough roadmap in your head.
Yeah, I know I want a shotgun and a bar.
Awesome.
No, I've limited a little bit the upgrades that I have, but I'm not, going, okay, the first 5 experience is this, and the next 5 is this. I don't know.
I mean, part of it is because I have to plan out the adaptables, but I also need to know which cards to bring, because I'm not bringing my whole collection on the plane, so...
Right.
Man, the idea of sleight of hand and unloading a bar on something is just so insane.
Right?
Yeah.
Knowing my luck, I'll get him
lightning gun on that. So what's the combo name for
Browning Automatic Slifle?
Well, I don't
hear any dissension.